William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
Service providers. And so this is about us giving to you and not about selling anything. So just want to make sure to keep that pure. And so we put together a manifesto and we said, we're here to connect, educate, and amplify our missions. And we know that outside of this room, we all compete for the same grant money. But inside this room, we're all here to share our information and learn from each other. So our volunteers, Angela actually just walked into the room. Thank you for volunteering. If you saw him at the front desk, Lon is also volunteering tonight and helping us. William, who I just met, is volunteering to do the video. And then Jill from the library has been a huge help in getting the space set up for us tonight. Let's do some logistics. Restrooms are right outside, if you haven't found them. The women's restroom is on the left of where you registered. The men's restroom is on the right. And then does anybody need Wi-Fi access? Or are we all good? Anybody want Wi-Fi? I think we're fine. Jill, do we have Wi-Fi access? It's public? Okay, so we're good. If you are tweeting tonight, there's a few hashtags. So NP Tech is the most common one that's used for the national group. NP Tech North Texas, or NTX, is what we use for our group specifically. And then Tech for Good is another common one, using the number 4 for 4. We welcome questions, but if we could hold them for when our presenters are pausing. I don't know if they're pausing in the middle or if we're just holding them till the very end. Would you let me know? Okay. We'll play that by ear, but we don't want a whole lot of questions coming at each and every slide because we want to make sure that they can get through the presentation since we're recording it. So let's aim for the end, but if you do pause somewhere in the middle because it makes sense for the room, then we'll do that. Presenter slides are already loaded online. I can't remember the link right now, but I will give it to you by the end of this presentation. So I'll look it up. So when our presenters are done, I'll actually provide that link for you. And then there is a survey to take. This link will also go out to all of you as well. Okay. Okay, it'll be a different link than the one that's listed here. So we're special, so we wanted to make our own survey. So we do have a survey that's going out, and it'll ask you if you want to volunteer for a future event, which our next event is actually on the next slide. Not that one. On the next slide. Nope, not that one either. November 28th, 2017. Sharla, what's Sharla's last name? Powers? Myers. Sharla Myers will be speaking to us about security and cybersecurity, right? You want to talk a little bit more about it? Thank you.
So one of the things that happens in the nonprofit sector is that we sacrifice security when it comes to our technology. We don't think it's that important. We also don't think about the risks associated with it. And if you really tap into your risk management practices, your insurance, this will help you tremendously. So Charlotte is an attorney who has, really dedicated her time to really improving the nonprofit sector, specifically as it relates to risk management. So she's coming in to talk about the things that we can do, even if we don't have large budgets, to make sure that our technology is protected, and also how to put certain policies in place, because many of us don't even realize that we need policies in place for our employees, for our volunteers, and for our operations to protect our technology, whatever it may be. And so she'll spend our time in November really highlighting that. This is something that is also being offered right now in the community. This particular workshop she's doing for us for free, and right now the same thing is being offered at cost. So if you are interested, I recommend that you send out the save the date and RSVP links, which won't be immediately that you sign up for it if you're interested in that.
Yes, and as an organization that's actually going through their HIPAA compliance, this is going to be an interesting talk because it'll give you information about what to ask your technology providers. So as a technology provider, sometimes we don't even know exactly what we need for certain compliance. need people that can help us through those questions. All right, I'm going to go backwards real quick. So these are the slides from NTN themselves, the national organization. This is the link to join, so it's ntn.org/join, so it's super simple. And then they also offer courses that you can take, so ntn.org/courses. All right. Make sure that you're in the right room. Facebook, but Matt has also joined him tonight, and so I'll let them actually introduce themselves rather than reading all of this. They can give you a briefer introduction to who they are and what they do.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Okay, perfect. Again, my name is Cameron Ripley. I'm the CEO and founder over at Community Boost Consulting, and this is Matt Better, who is our COO, and truly he's our real AdWords specialist originally. When we actually started doing Google AdWords, we'll naturally share that story with you guys. But I have to say it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I actually, excuse me, I was born in Fort Worth, and I lived in Mansfield, Texas till I was about 15. And then I moved to Albuquerque, and then Arizona, and then San Diego. And so we founded a company called Community Boost Consulting. And so we primarily do digital marketing in the social sector. And but with that, through our own journey, we just discovered the Google Grant and the power it can have to drive more awareness for your nonprofit, get more people on your website to become a supporter, a volunteer, or a donor. And so just to get a pulse of the room, I'm curious, how many people work at a nonprofit? Okay, excellent, most of the room. And then with that, how many of you guys actually have the Google Grant currently? Okay, perfect. Well, that's good to know. So we'll definitely be sharing a lot about the basics of it, how it works. You're going to walk out of here with there's a few key agenda items that we're going to be covering. So first is the fundamentals. What is the Google Ad Grant? How to get approved, that process, how we can get you this $10,000 per month grant in 7 business days or less. From there, we're going to just talk about a lot of the strategies. So we've been doing this since 2014, and we figured out a lot throughout that time period. Because getting the grant is one thing, and then using it to actually have people engage with your website is another. So we're going to talk through best practices. We have a case study as well to talk about some examples. And then we try to design this too so that we have plenty of room for Q&A. So try and hold that to the end. We are going to cover a lot, and then we'll, again, we're hoping to get through our content about half an hour, and then from there, really just take any questions you guys have. But before we talk Google Grants, I like to just take a quick look back in the rearview mirror and really just talk about the evolution of search and Google itself. So 1997, this was 20 years ago, this is what we refer to as the first wave of the internet. This was, literally when America was getting all online. We all remember that annoying dial-up sound. To give us context of technology, in 97, IBM launched this, room-sized computer called Deep Blue, which made national headline news because it could beat a human in chess. And it's kind of crazy, right? 20 years later, the conversations we're having about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And in 1997, this is when Google launched ads on the platform for the first time. They never put them on their homepage, which I think was a brilliant decision. We all remember Yahoo and all the other competitors doing that. But we had them here at the top and on the right sidebar. So fast forward, that was the first wave of the internet. It was really taking the internet to the consumer market and battling government regulation and everything like that. And here we are in 2007, which is what people deem kind of the second wave of the internet. And in 2007, Apple launched the iPhone for the first time. This has forever transformed how we use the internet. Social media was really just gaining traction. Facebook had 50 million total users. In 2007, it was still 2 years before we even had a like button. And AdWords, 10 years later, achieved $16 billion in annual revenue. And so here we are in 2017, which people are now deeming the beginning of the third wave of the internet, where soon we're going to have this world where everything's going to have internet, and be really, just how things used to be electricity enabled. Now, we're going to stop saying internet enabled, and then really that's going to be everything. So in 2017, social media is simply a way of life. 10 years ago, Facebook had 50 million total users. In 2017, it has over 2 billion daily active users. Of course, we have many other platforms with hundreds of millions of daily active users. AdWords now achieves over $50 billion in annual revenue. So, sometimes nonprofits say, well, how can they give us $10,000 per month in free ads? And I said, don't worry, Google's doing just fine. But, and we'll talk through some of the stipulations as well that they place on the nonprofit. And things at Community Boost that we find fascinating, this race to create free global internet is upon us, which really can just uplift and empower so many communities around the world through the internet. And I just love this statement, or possibly fact, but right now a person in a third world country on a smartphone using Google has access to more information than the US president did just 25 years ago. And so you might be thinking, so what, right? I thought we were talking Google grants. But really, the internet has just forever changed the way we find and we receive information. And while our world continues to become more digital every single day, here at Community Boost, we believe that everyone is searching for something. And no matter what one is searching for, one often starts searching with Google, right? The world's largest search engine, which does over 100 billion daily active searches, monthly searches, and really just dominates the internet search market, with over 67% of all searches happening on the platform, and they're expected to have over 80% of all searches happening on Google by the end of 2019. And so today, yes, we're talking about your $10,000 per month Google grant, but what we really want you to walk away with from this meeting today is not just how do I get this $120,000 a year or potentially send tens of thousands of visitors, but more importantly, ideas and how you can use the Google grant to really streamline how you generate more supporters, volunteers, customers, and of course donors. And that's really the power that the Google grant can have. Here at Community Boost, our purpose is we exist to empower social ventures changing the world. And just to give you context of our mission, we're on a mission to impact the lives of over 3 million people every year by 2020 by supporting game-changing nonprofits. Because we're marketers at heart, but really we know how life-enriching or even life-saving the work your nonprofits do is, and that's what really drives our entire team. But at Community Boost, before we did Google Grants, right, we were there. So I used to work at a digital agency. We were in the startup tech space. That was our customer. And then we started doing some work in nonprofits. And that was the inspiration to found Community Boost. And we used to just struggle, right? Like we would build these great websites. They had powerful missions. But it just always felt like this uphill climb to get more supporters, donors, and customers to the site. And then we launched our first Google grant. So this is actually how we got started. We were working with an organization called Wounded Warrior Homes. In San Diego, we have a very large military community. And Wounded Warrior Homes was small. They were doing about $250,000 a year in total revenue. And they provided transitional housing for veterans who are battling post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. And before their Google grant, they did $17,000 in online donations from 233 donors. Then the following year, we scaled their Google grant. We increased online revenue to $95,000 from 1,400 online donors. And so an organization of this size was certainly, pleased, but we continue to work with them on the Google grant since. But for us, really, we call this an aha moment. This actually really pivoted how we support the social sector, and that's where we just started really specializing on the Google grant and taking that on. And so, I wanted to share that with you because we begin this frame of mind of, so many people go to Google. And as a nonprofit, it's hard to be on the first page of Google. But the Google grant can really be your really competitive advantage doing that. So Matt's going to walk you through the fundamentals of exactly how the grant works and teach you about that.
All right, thank you, Cameron. So I'm going to show you the basics of the Google Ad Grant, how it works, so you can really get an understanding of what this all really means and how does it translate to more donations, supporters, and volunteers. Well, when someone searches online in Google, they're doing a couple things that are unique. Number one, we know what they're looking for, and we know when they're looking for it. And this is really important because when someone's searching for Google, we want to connect a potential donor with your cause and someone that's never heard of you before. And we want to make sure that they really get to know who you are because you guys have interests that align. So in this example, we're going to use an organization called Moms in Prayer International. And they are an organization in over 100 countries around the world, and they bring mothers together in their local communities to pray for children in schools. And so in this example, if you're part of this prayer group and someone types in prayer for children, well, we know what they're looking for. They're looking for a prayer for their child. Now, this is someone who's never heard of Moms in Prayer International before. However, they have a lot in common with them. So when somebody types something into Google, what happens? Well, you get all of these search results coming online, and it's really hard to get on the first page of Google. And most nonprofits do not show up for this organically. And when I mean organically, I mean you're not paying to get on there. In fact, it can take years for an organization such as Moms in Prayer to come up on the first page for a search term, prayers for children. And why is it so important to be on the very first page of Google? Well, Google's released a statistic that 96% of people, if they don't find what they're looking for, they retype in their search query. So that means that 4% of people who search online go to the second page of the internet to find what they're looking for. So what does that mean for your nonprofit? Well, if you're not on the first page of Google, then you're not being found. And it is so competitive to get on there. And so this is the Google Ad Grant. It is your unfair competitive advantage to overnight get on the front page of Google when it matters most. So there's a box highlighted here in orange, and this is the Google Ad Grant at work. Well, we know what someone's typing into Google. Google keeps a record of all of this. And so we tell Google, show my nonprofit organization when it makes sense, when they haven't heard of our organization, but they want to know who we are. So again, in this specific example, someone's looking prayer for children, has never heard of Moms in Prayer before, but here they are at the very top of the page. And so notice it's a non-branded term. What I mean by that, they're not typing the name of the organization. And this is really the power of the Google Ad Grant. No matter what your nonprofit does, someone is searching for it. And so this is how you can get exposed to new donors, new volunteers, and supporters. So how does it work? Well, when somebody clicks on your ad, they are then taken to your website. Now, one of the biggest mistakes we see nonprofit makes is they'll send it to your homepage. And the reason you don't want to send someone to your homepage is that there is a lot going on. You're asking for donations. You're saying, here's the new event, here are the new, whatever you're doing, there's a lot happening. And so you want to send them specifically to where they want to go. So depending on what they type in, you're going to send them to a specific page of your website. So in this example, someone typed in prayer for children. So we're going to go join a prayer group. Because if they're doing prayers, well, they're going to want to join other people doing it as well for the most part. And we're also testing where we're sending traffic to. So we'll start testing sending to join a prayer group, but then we've also actually built another landing page, meaning where we send traffic to, all about prayers for children. So we're quickly answering the question or need that someone had online. So what does this mean? You get $10,000 of free advertising every single month. Now, unfortunately, you don't get a check in the mail from Google for $10,000, but rather it's like a gift card, where they keep refilling your advertising account every single month. And what the $10,000 means is you can get about 5,000 people or more to your website every single month. And so you'll notice here at the very top, we have 4 ads. In fact, I'm going to go back a slide, and you'll notice at the very top of the search result, it's only ads. And so back in 2005, Google released a study, and they wanted to look, where do people click on a Google search engine result page, and where are they looking? And what they found was that there was a golden triangle. So there's a triangle at the very top of the page, and that 80% of the clicks happened in the first 4 positions. And so that's why you'll notice there are 4 spots for ads at the very top. So even if you're showing up organically online and not paying for it, well, the people who are paying for ads are generally getting a lot of the clicks. And so there are some things about the Google Ad Grant that you need to be aware about. There are some stipulations that can make it a little more difficult to rank online if you're not very familiar with how AdWords works. And the first one is the $2 cost per click. So just as a raise of hands, how many people have heard of a cost per click before? Okay, so what that means is every time somebody clicks on an ad on Google, well, it's charging the advertiser money. And it's a combination of how relevant is it and how much you're willing to bid. But for today's example, it's really based on market-based pricing. If someone is willing to pay $10 for a cost per click, well, now that click is worth $10. And so every industry, different nonprofits are going to have different cost per clicks. So for some nonprofits, it may be really easy to rank for these keywords that you want to show up online. And by keyword, I mean, what is someone typing into Google? And for others, it might be more difficult. And generally, the more specific you go, the easier it is to rank for these terms online. And to put it in perspective, if somebody types in the word donate online, it can range anywhere from $20 to $40 in order to rank for that keyword. And so that's usually the term that most nonprofits want to sign up for. How can I get more donations? And so just know that it takes time to be able to rank for keywords that have a higher cost per click, but it's doable.
And to add to the $2 cost per click as well. So, Matt hit on that example, donate, right? Which is, yes, I'd love to be on the first page, but again, that can be expensive. Like with Wounded Warrior Homes, that example, the first time we did Google Grants, we would go after, donate to veterans, donate to military families. Veterans donate what we refer to as, long tail keywords. And, yes, they have less search volume, but that's a big secret to the Google Grant for nonprofits to really, effectively go after the long tail keywords. And when you do that, you can, if you do it enough, right, we can actually get that traffic we're looking for. And then the good news is if somebody searches a long tail keyword and then comes to your site, they typically are more qualified, they're more relevant, and they typically convert more.
Yeah, and that's really important what Cameron's saying, to go very specific to what someone's typing into Google. Because if someone's typing in how to donate to an organization that helps mothers pray for children, well, they're much more likely to donate when they get to the site, and that actually helps your ranking online. There are a lot of rankings that help, and it's all based on, is it a positive user experience, and are people finding what they're looking for? So the next thing that you need to know is that the Google ad rank is search text ads only. So what's a search text ad? Well, this is a search text ad on a normal Google page when you show up for it. So what it doesn't include are YouTube video ads, or if you've ever been to a website and you see a video or you see a picture and it's an ad on a website, that does not count with the Google ad rank. It's only when it's on a Google search engine result page.
Or those display ads, if you hit like a travel site, right, and they follow you around the internet, we're not allowed to use those with the Google Grant.
Now, the next thing we need to know is that unfortunately, we can't spend all $10,000 in one day if we wanted to, but rather we have a budget of $329 a day. And over the course of a month, this equals $10,000. So if there are 31 days in a month, you'll get a little more ad spend than if there's only 28 days in a month. And then lastly, there are eligibility restrictions. So Google says that if you're a government entity, you're not eligible for the grant. If you're a hospital, a school, or an academic institution. And so Google does limit that, but every other nonprofit is eligible for this grant.
You do need to be an approved 501c3, so if you are still pending your 501c3 status, you have to wait till you get the official approval. But for the most part, the vast majority of 501c3s can qualify. And I think we're going to hit on it too, but again, it's fast, right? It's about 7 business days or even less once you apply with Google. So a quick history lesson about the Google Ad Grant. It has been around for a long time, over 15 years now. And it's not going anywhere, it is here to stay. And so with that, the nonprofits who got in from the very beginning, they got $10,000 a month in free advertising. And if you got that from the very beginning, that's $1.8 million in free advertising. And you get this for the life of your nonprofit. So if you were there from the start, knowing it gets about 5,000 clicks to your website every month, well, that means they've had nearly 1 million people come to their nonprofit's website since the start. And so now is the second best time to jump in on it to keep it going. Now again, as Cameron is saying, this is not your average grant. With your average grant, it takes months and months to get it, and you're not even guaranteed to get this grant. However, with the Google Ad Grant, you can get it very quickly. In fact, once you're approved something for Google for Nonprofits, we'll go in a sec what that means, but it can take under 10 business days to get this grant. And what we find is that it actually takes within 3 days to get it.
So there's not a long waiting period, and you can get this essentially overnight to start showing up at the very top of Google. And then lastly, Google has mentioned that only 30,000 nonprofits are using this grant right now. Now, that may sound like a lot, but in the United States alone, there's over 1.5 million nonprofits. And so what does this mean for you? Well, a lot of the nonprofits are going to start bidding on the same keywords that your nonprofit are going to want to. So this means it's the easiest now that it ever will be to rank online for the keywords that you want to show up on Google. So when someone's typing something in Google that's relevant for your nonprofit organization, this is the time to get into it because it's only going to get more and more competitive. All right, so I'm sure you guys are wondering now, how do you apply for this grant? It sounds really good. I want to get started. Well, there's really 3 main steps. And the first is you need to apply for this third party called TechSoup. And Google uses TechSoup, so make sure that you're a legitimate nonprofit. Because if Google's going to give you $10,000 every single month, they want to make sure that you're a real nonprofit and an established 501c3. And when you sign up with TechSoup, you're going to get a validation token. And this is key because the second step is to apply for something called Google for Nonprofits. And Google for Nonprofits has a bunch of benefits for nonprofits, more than just the Google Ad Grant. So that's just one part of it. It also includes special things for your YouTube page. So for example, if you sign up for this, you can get a donate button on your YouTube page. And they also allow you to get the Google Suite for free. So what does that mean? Well, Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Sheets, that's all free for nonprofits, part of Google for Nonprofits.
Gmail, all those tools, they're incredible.
And so the Google Ad Grant is just one of the things that Google gives you in it. And once you sign up for it to get the Google Grant, you get all these other things from Google as well. Now, the third part is actually applying for the Google Ad Grant itself. And if you're not very experienced with the Google AdWords platform, this is what can take the most time. And why is that? Well, that's because now you actually have to go into the Google AdWords platform and start to create ads. So you need to create a campaign, an ad group. I know some of these are foreign terms, but they require you to build this. You have to have a keyword and an ad that's live. And don't worry, you don't get charged anything. This is all 100% free. In fact, part of the requirement is that you skip the billing, so that way you don't get charged at all for this. And so for a nonprofit that's never been in the backwards of the AdWords platform, it can take 4 hours or more simply because you're not familiar with the AdWords interface. However, if you are experienced with the platform, it's much faster to apply. And then the last step, step 4, is just waiting to get the Google Ad Grant. They say it takes about 10 business days, although what we found on average, it takes about 2 or 3 days to hear back from Google. So again, the next thing is eligibility restrictions. I want to go into a bit more detail, so what does this actually mean? And as Cameron mentioned earlier, you need to be an established 501c3. So if you're pending, unfortunately, you're not able to get it, but as soon as you get your status, you're able to be eligible for the Google Ad Grant. Now the other thing is that you need to have a website that's live, and that's really important because what is the Google Ad Grant? Well, you're showing up online, and when somebody clicks an ad, they're being taken to your website. And so if you don't have a website, well then there's nowhere to send someone to. So you need to make sure that your nonprofit's website is up and running. And then as we mentioned before, you need to make the only people that are not eligible for the grant if you're a governmental entity, an academic institution, a school, or a hospital. And now there's one really important thing that most nonprofits don't know when they sign up for the Google Ad Grant, and that's how do you keep this going? So Google wants to make sure that you're in the Google Ad Grant making optimizations at least once every 90 days. And that's really important because if they're giving you $10,000 of free advertising every single month, they want to make sure that you're doing the best job possible to make it very relevant for when people are typing online. Because if you're showing up for terms that are not relevant for your nonprofit, well now it's a negative experience using Google, and now someone's going to use another search engine. So they want to make sure that you're in it, making sure it's relevant for the end user. And so if you're not in there once every 90 days, Google has the right to deactivate you, so you no longer have the grant. Now, if you're a nonprofit, you're not sure if you've had it or been deactivated, there's good news, you can reactivate it. However, you can only reactivate it one time. If you get deactivated for a second time, then you lose this for life. And so it's so important that when you sign up for it, that you're willing to put in the time commitment to make sure that you're running the ad grant. And one of the main questions we get from nonprofits is, how much time do I need to put in this? I'm really busy, I'm strapped for time, I'm strapped for resources. And so what we say is, what you put in is what you get out of it. And so a lot of time is up front, building out the online campaigns, doing the research, what are people typing into Google? And then once you have that all down, you have the foundation, we recommend putting about an hour a week in this to start getting amazing results with it. Now, if you're strapped for time, you can put less time in it, but remember, what you put in is what you get out. So we recommend you put at least an hour a week into it, and the more time you put in, the better results you're going to get.
The only other thing to add to that is we get asked a fair amount, well, do you have to reapply? What does that look like, right? So enrollment and application, that's a rolling process. You can apply at any time. And then as Matt said, just to make sure we all got that, you actually don't have to reapply. As long as you stay active, that's all you really need to do. So as long as you're going in at least every 90 days, but hopefully investing more time, especially if you're starting to get strong results. That's what's really exciting, right? Like if somebody applied 15 years ago and they kept it activated, they never had to talk to Google again to get reapproved or anything like that.
When you say put in an hour a week, what are we doing? Just asking questions on our own, or?
Yeah, really good question. So that can be a whole talk in itself. What do you do on the back end? But I'll put a really simple example. So if somebody's searching online and you can see what triggered your ad, what did somebody type on Google that actually clicked on your ad and brought them to your website? Well, you can take a look at it, and especially when you start off, you may find that some of the terms that triggered your ad are not what you expected, and that it's not relevant to your nonprofit. And so what you can do, it's called negative keyword research. And this is one of the many optimizations you can do. But if you find there's a particular keyword that's irrelevant that triggered your ad, well, you can tell Google, don't show my ad in the future if someone types that in. So over time, you get better results because you start weeding out, okay, well, if all those terms weren't relevant, then in the future, only relevant ones show. And that's only one small thing. And so this is what we mean by optimizations, putting time into the account. And like I said, this could be a whole other talk on what to do to best optimize it. But that's what we mean by going in the account every week.
Is there a way to get that talk on?
Yeah, we actually we were having some margaritas with Cheryl last night, and we were talking about we could do a more advanced webinar, possible follow-up webinar, and actually talk through what's it like when you're in AdWords. And when Matt says running a campaign and setting up an ad, today's talk with a lot of us new to the grant, get the overall strategy, but we'd be happy to do a follow-up event where we actually got in there.
Perfect. And now I'm going to pass on to Cameron, who's going to give you the high-level picture of what's the strategy you need to know for this.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And then, Matt, throughout this, feel free to chime in if there's anything we're missing for the funnel stuff. So where we like to start when we start to think about the strategy of your Google grant is, what is your organization's marketing funnel? So this is naturally a marketing term. But when we think about what we want people to do on your website, right, at the top of the funnel, we have getting people to the site, right? And that's where the Google grant is so powerful. We can get 5,000 additional people to the top of your site, to the top of your funnel. But, right, often when we talk to nonprofit, what are we actually wanting people to do? Donate, or volunteer, or call a hotline, or, a lead if we do senior home care services. There's all sorts of different things, right? And so that's more of the bottom of the funnel. So kind of a typical funnel might be a new visitor. And then if we can get their email, right? Sometimes it takes multiple touch points for someone to actually donate, for example. So we can get their email, we can provide more value and really onboard them into our mission. And then we can make that first transaction, whether that's a purchase or a donation. And then hopefully too, right, with some donor stewardship and that type of thing, we can actually move them into a visionary donor or a lifetime customer. And so each organization has their own unique funnel, but that's just a big point to the Google grant, because just because we get your Google grant does not mean online donations, it's not a light switch, right? It's a great way to get people to the top of the funnel, but it takes some other efforts. And so that's the strategy we want to hit on, right? Because the grant can get us 5,000 people to the top of the funnel, but how many people do we need to our site to actually hit our online revenue goals. And that's something that you can, reverse engineer and really strategize. Because again, with the Google grant, it's the majority of the traffic often is first-time visitors. Because, if I search how to help homeless veterans and I go to the Wounded Warrior Homes website, right, I have to search how to help homeless veterans. So that's just a big thing to keep in mind when it comes to the grant. So how do we do that? And, Matt was talking a little bit about Moms in Prayer International, and these are just some tactics we put in play, and we'll talk through these tools as well, so you guys have, these tools in your tool belt to execute on. So looking at their funnel, and just some data from Moms in Prayer in 2017, again, we'll send this out, but their number one traffic source was the Google grant. It made up over 38% of their total traffic, and we see that for a lot of organizations, even local organizations we work with. It can be so much, one of your top traffic channels, and really the consistency. That's what's so powerful with the grant, because we're digital marketers, right? We love Facebook and Instagram. These are great platforms, but they're often, what content have you created for us? Where the grant can be a lot of work up front, but when you get that dialed in, that consistency of traffic is something you can really forecast in your marketing efforts. So we have, the grant sending a lot of traffic, and these search terms would be things like uplifting Bible verses, prayers to pray for children, prayer of the day, morning prayer, God's faith. Again, this is a Christian-based organization. The persona we were trying to get to their site is a Christian mother, right? And so those are some great terms for us to have someone search and then hit their website. So that's the top of the funnel. But then how do we start to do these other things that we were talking about, right? Again, we don't just want to send all the traffic to the homepage, because if somebody searches uplifting Bible verse, that's not what they were really looking for. We want to provide value. So at Community Boost and some tools we'll use, there's some really cool tools you can use that help you build landing pages. We could send out some of these resources, but whether it's a ClickFunnels or if you're using your WordPress, those tools typically integrate very effectively.
Just to add on something really quick. So I know some of these might be foreign terms. What does that all mean? So what we can do is we can find what's gaining a lot of traction with the ad grant. So in this example, we may find there's a ton of people coming in prayers for our children. And if that page doesn't already exist on their nonprofit's website, well, we can create a custom page all around that, because that will really help serve the need that someone typed into Google. And so that really comes into play when you have someone on your team that can build it out, because it takes a lot of time. This page that Cameron's showing you, this is something that our team built out specifically to help someone address their issue. Because once you provide value for them and you get your email, Cameron's going to talk about this, well, you build a relationship with them. So that's what he means by ClickFunnels, WordPress. They're all different landing pages where we're sending people to that are custom made.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So, and that's a great point. So when you get your Google grant going, you can start to see the keywords that are sending the most visitors. So for Moms in Prayer, we're getting a lot of visitors with prayers for my son, prayers for my daughter, and we didn't really have a page for that on their site. And so we created this landing page, again, with these, all the tools we're mentioning are, for the most part, pretty affordable, and we're working with nonprofits, we have limited marketing resources. But where, if we didn't have this page, those people might leave. But this page, 10% of the visitors actually will click that button, and we have an email pop up, and we get their email. And automatically in their inbox is our branded guide of their prayers for their children, or we test different things. 31 days of scripture prayer, that actually had a higher conversion rate, right? So we get their email, and we actually provided value. And these are just some of the other tools we talk about here. So this is like a pop-up, right? For Moms in Prayer, one of the things we really want to do is have people join a prayer group. If they come in, if they actually experience the mission, right? Your nonprofit might actually want someone to volunteer. Because often, right, like if I go and volunteer and actually help maybe pack a meal, for example, so much more likely to be a donor or a fundraiser of that organization. So this is just an example of another tool here that helps get people to where we want to go. That's a big part. Scroll boxes, you guys might see these on some websites. Again, one of the main tools we use for this is actually called SumoMe. I think we should send out some of these tools, we'll link you guys. And if you use WordPress or these other website platforms, they're very easy to integrate. And so these, where if we just do a general email scroll box, it's usually about 3% of people will give you their email. If it's custom to the content on that page, almost 6% of people will give you your email. But again, if we're sending 5,000 visitors a month, we're talking potentially hundreds of new email subscribers every month that you can then market your campaigns to. Another tool here for email subscribers is welcome mats. And with these tools, they just allow you to really adjust your settings too. So say we only want to show this for a first-time visitor, right? Like that's an easy setting because obviously if you sent this to everyone all the time, that'd be really annoying. But you can do this where it's really first-time visitors because again, right now, most nonprofits, when we first look at what they're doing without the grant, it's almost all their traffic comes from branded terms, from someone only searching moms in prayer. Where with the Google grant, you start to get all this traffic that's never heard of the brand, right? So we have to start to build that relationship. And these welcome mats is something we've actually really been testing more in 2017, and they work really well. And then conversion bars, right? Say you're running a year-end campaign where you have a Giving Tuesday campaign. You can launch these conversion bars and they can just really highlight that big campaign that you're running specifically and just make sure people know about it, right? Where if it's just buried on your website, that doesn't really do us a lot of good. And then email marketing. So in Moms in Prayer, right, we're in the middle of the funnel now. We've been building a lot of emails every month. And again, this just shows us, right? So if I'm on that landing page, I download the 31 Days of Scripture Prayer. Well, now I'm getting an email where I can get those scriptures. But you can also see things, right? We include videos, for example, and we want to start to really share the mission overall of the organization. We can then invite them to a local prayer group. And when we kicked off this presentation, right, we talked about streamlining new donor acquisition. And so these type of efforts help you do that. And then, some tools that support you on actually getting people to give. There's a tool called, you can do this, and we were talking about this with Cheryl too, but whether it's Crazy Egg or, we'll definitely email all these out. I know it's a bunch of weird branded terms. But Crazy Egg or SumoMe, doing some heat mapping, right? And you can have someone on your team really start to understand where people click. Because without these tools, we just say, oh, I like that, or let's do this on the site. But if you know so many people are clicking this one area of your website, right? Like if we can go from 1% of people donating to 2%, we just doubled online donation transactions in theory. So these type of tools will help you get more of those donors. And some non-technical stuff that I just like to throw at you guys as well is when you launch a new campaign or you want to get some feedback on your donation page, actually ask donors, or ask your potential audience. If you get 5 people to give you really raw feedback that kind of match the person you're trying to connect with and enroll, that will almost take care of, I'd estimate 80% of the problems you would have, where sometimes, when we're working with nonprofits, we get really in our own zone. We spend hours or weeks coming up with a campaign, and we never even ran it by a potential audience that we're actually trying to take it to market with. So those are some other tools to help you move people down the funnel. And then last, donor stewardship. And I know everything we talked about here today was very digital. The Google grant, 5,000 visitors and a lot of big numbers. But digitally, there's still so much opportunity to stand out from other organizations, right? We can, use email marketing to just, right now, I would say, and I don't, many nonprofits, if I was to give an online donation, I'd probably just get a transactional email, maybe a transactional thank you email, and that's really it. But in 2017, as we enter into this, world of digital marketing, there's just such an opportunity to use that to keep our costs low, but to really communicate with donors in a new way. Imagine on Giving Tuesday, right? Like anyone who donates to your nonprofit. What if somebody on your team or a volunteer or, if it's Wounded Warrior Homes, we have one of the veterans that day, just record a quick thank you video on their phone, and we just email it to them. That doesn't really cost us anything, and that's just kind of the last part, because when it comes to creating more visionary and repeat donors, the Google grant is great at trying to get new donors, but there's an opportunity to really personalize that message more. And that's just, low-hanging fruit to really re-engage people, right? Like if we're running a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, say we get a $500 gift, right? Like say Matt is fundraising for my nonprofit, and somebody gave Matt $500 or $1,000. That's a lot of money. So whoever gave that to Matt, they likely have some capacity to give. And that'd be, and so many nonprofits that might be doing that type of fundraising, that they're not actually following up with that person who gave $1,000 to Matt. What if you took that person a coffee and you learned why they gave to your org, right? And see what kind of capacity they have for you. So just wanted to share a little bit of that, because while so much of this is digital, really it just comes down to, using email and these tools to kind of take that communication level to that next level. So just to recap, and then we'll definitely open up to questions. We covered the fundamentals of the ag grant. Those slides, some of those links included, will really set you up to get moving, get to the right pages, and hopefully get approved for the Google grant very quickly. From there, we talked through some of those strategies, right? So the Google grant has the potential to send 5,000 visitors a month, 60,000 visitors a year to your site, but getting people to the site is one thing. And then using some other tools to actually, get them involved, or, calling your nonprofit, depending on what your goals are. And then we talked through Moms in Prayer to try and shed some light on exactly how that works. So definitely, Matt come back in here as well, but we work with a lot of different nonprofits here at Community Boost. These are some of the nonprofits we've really been humbled and honored to work with this year. So, sharing that, if that helps spark any questions for you guys, but I definitely want to just open up to any questions you guys have. And yeah.
So I'm familiar with list building. I'm familiar with, opt-in offers, that type of thing, email campaign, how you kind of pre-market your email campaign. How long, for nonprofits, different in business, in the for-profit business world, how long should a nonprofit wait their ad campaign, their email campaign to start the ask, the call to action, like, give us your money?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how long do you think you should really cultivate that relationship before you go for the ask and that call to action?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, man, I wish I had the exact number, but the thing is, when it comes to email marketing and when you're talking through, those different email sequences, for most nonprofits, we got to kind of, like crawl, walk, and then run, right? So in crawling, I would just say maybe an email 3 or 4, and you just start testing and see if anyone's taken action. Then after a while, you can start to get a little more advanced in your emails, and maybe if somebody's opened a certain amount of times or they click on a certain link, you can give them that ask email. But I think just naturally you want to provide some value, some opportunity, make sure they're getting those videos that really share the mission, especially if it's coming from pages of people that are very new. And then just sharing the creative of your upcoming campaigns. So I know it's not.
One thing I want to add on to that, I think Cameron mentioned, just want to highlight it, it's the testing. There's not one right answer. It depends on the nonprofit, it depends on your space. Everyone's in a different space with it. But there is no one right answer. So make an ask after email 3 or 4. See if people donate. If they don't, then okay, well then try building the relationship longer. Then ask email 8. And then if you don't, then go a little longer. There's no one right answer. But as long as you're always testing, even with the ads, how many people are clicking, oh, that's not working, let's change the messaging. Because there is no one right answer.
right? Or with Moms in Prayer, we would, really a lot of those emails were actually focused on just getting someone to a local prayer group. Because if they actually experience the mission, then we'd have so much more success in someone giving. And actually, before we made an ask, we would do things like, would you like to make a donation and get the book that the executive director wrote? And seeing if you have any sort of value exchanges you can give, that helps a lot too. Other questions? Yeah.
So you did the ad and we set up the website and all of that. And then you mentioned you get, of course, results. Do we analyze the results, or do you give us a report so that we can analyze the results? Or how do we do that to see that it's working and which keywords are working?
Yeah, really good question. So it depends. If you're doing this yourself, Google has a reporting section on their advertising platform itself. It's one of the main columns that says reports. So you can play around with the data. If you decide to go with someone to help you with the grant, then they will show you the reports with it. But no matter what,
How do you get someone to help you?
I mean,
Is that what you provide, or?
so we do help nonprofits with it, and we can talk after, but Sonali, all the information is there for you to use. So Google has a reporting section. You can look at it in pie charts, you can look at it in line graphs. However, what works best for you, Google provides it for you.
Yeah, once you start to get in the back end of AdWords, you can really start to see what's working. AdWords is a Google product, right? And I'm sure a lot of your websites have what's called Google Analytics on it. And AdWords and Analytics can be linked up. So if you are used to looking at analytics, that can naturally have a lot of your AdWords data in it as well.
Some background, analytics, what he's referring to is whatever happens on your website, how many pages they go, where do they visit. Analytics tells you all this information, and it's free from Google as well.
I was just wondering about hashtags and AdWords and how do they correlate when you're making those decisions on your website? Because when you were saying about donate veterans or, that sounded like a hashtag to me.
Okay. So, hashtags, that's definitely more of a social media tool, but if social media is a big part of your strategy and what you do in your nonprofit, naturally when you get more people to your site, we do see a lot of people, they check out your social media naturally. But again, kind of like if you're building the email list, if you're running a campaign on social and you want to really educate people on that too, it's all integrated in essence. But we usually don't include hashtags in the ads or anything like that. You have limited amount of characters, and unless you have a hashtag that you think people are Googling, but that would probably be a more rare instance. I think there was one over here. Yes.
Is it possible before you go through the application process to be able to see a list of other nonprofits in your particular industry that might have been given a grant? Like, who in my competition is already utilizing this?
That's a really good question. So number one, the easiest answer, Google something and whoever comes up, they're using it. So that's the easy answer. The other thing is that there are third-party tools that you can use. So for example, we'll add another one to the list for you guys, but SEMrush. We use this tool and it lets you know if someone's using ad spend or not, so you don't have to wait to trigger the ad because maybe they ran out of ad spend that day, and if you Google, they're not going to come up. There are a lot of third-party tools. It's kind of a wormhole, it keeps on going, but the easiest way is to Google it.
But then to add to kind of research as well, when you start to go through that process and you're in AdWords, there's something called the keyword planner. And that can be a really cool way to start to explore and see which terms are getting the most volume that are relevant for you. That's a big tool. If we run that advanced, kind of get it going webinar, we would certainly talk about
But that's after you've been approved. So if I wanted to go to my manager and pitch this is why we should do it, they're going to ask me, well, who of our competitors are using this and what kind of success or not have they had? So I guess what I'm hearing is that you can't just go to the magic Google list and see everybody who's been a grant recipient.
Right. Well, one of the other things is what are the other well-known profits that are really on the cutting edge? Are they using it? And we find that they're using the ad grant. The Red Cross, Charity Water, a lot of these main nonprofits who have more resources are all using it, and they're using it for a reason. So the ad grant is we used to do all types of online marketing, Facebook, website, but we are Google Ad Grant company because what we found is it had the best results. Now, not to say don't ignore those others, but we wanted to become really great at the ad grant.
Could you repeat the third-party resource that you just mentioned?
The SEM Rush.
SCM?
SEM Rush, that is probably a little more of an expensive tool. That costs $70 a month, so it's a little more. Probably not, it's when we work with a lot of nonprofits, so it's worth it for us. So we don't recommend it. Search on Google, it's cheap, it's free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I discovered that, like, I would bring back the Expresso thing only because it's kind of scary because you have to weed out potential people that do ads and they say, we're not going to be in competition with Google, you're fine to use us. And really, it's not. So you're limited to do Google ads only. You can't go over to Facebook and try out Expresso, because that's when you get into trouble and they suspend your account.
Yeah, and so we've actually never used that tool for Google Ads and Google Ad Grants, but I'd love to connect with you. We can follow up and talk through some of those tools.
It's important just to make sure that you know where your boundaries are, because they give you these, you get it way ahead in the beginning. They say, these are your restrictions, right? And I kind of looked at them and you gloss over that stuff because you want to just jump in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important to realize what they're saying. And I mean, you just don't want to have your whole thing frozen because you made a mistake.
That's a really great point. I'm glad you brought it up. So there are a lot of other rules that you need to follow with Google. So for example, you can't just put anything in an ad. You can't just use emojis and all these characters. And the list goes on. So if you go to google.com/grants, that's where you can find all the information about the Google Ad Grant. What are the restrictions? What do you need to know? So for example, I know speaking previously, you can't send traffic to another site that's not your own unless you get it approved by Google, because that can get you suspended. But Google lays it all out for you. You just have to take the time to go through it.
Did you say you were going to do a training somewhere on your Boost website?
Yeah, we'll do a training. We can set up an online training for that and kind of go through those things, right? For example,
where do you start?
Like
first?
vehicle donations. That's actually a term we're not supposed to go after with the grant. But it was more of a high-level strategy. But then, we'll follow up. We've done some of those trainings with other partners in the past, and that would be fun.
Because I saw somebody charges for a training too. There's a charge to be able to get information about the Google Grant.
There are a number of different ways you can get training. Some free, some people charge. Question?
Yeah, I have previously run AdWords campaigns, and I used to pay for ad space, but now we're in the position where we could potentially get the $10,000 a month free. So a few years ago, the first ad campaign that I ran, I actually was able to speak with a Google AdWords consultant. They did a Google build for me with my key search terms, and then I built one on my own, and you're able to kind of see the performance on each AdWord campaign. Is that something that, since this is free money, individuals could potentially call and speak with a Google AdWords representative and have them build the campaign for them?
So that's a really good question. Google will always answer your questions about the Google AdWords. However, they definitely prefer when you spend real money. So for example, we have worked with some people who are not nonprofits in the past. Now we only work with nonprofits. And when we have a Google rep, they generally want to help you if you're spending real money. However, they will help you with any questions that you have. Because they know, and what we found is that a lot of times nonprofits will start with the Google Ad Grant and realize this is working, and then realize if they put in real ad spend, they can also get a greater return. And so they're willing to help anyone, but they may put more preference if you're actually spending real money.
And a couple other things to that point too. So we think of Google as this massive company, which they are, but when it comes to the Google for Nonprofits team, it's really just a handful of full-time team members. And then what they do is they take advantage. So Google has this policy where they want people to work on, 20% of the time to work on something you're passionate about. And so Google for Nonprofits, this very small, almost startup-y type team, uses Google Volunteer Time to really run the whole Google for Nonprofits program. And then the only other thing in regards to if any of your nonprofits are paying real money, that's a more unique situation. But if you are, one of the things we started to do is we try and spend as much in the Google grant as we can. But if you are using any real money, then you can go after some of those very highly competitive keywords or run the remarketing ads, right? Like then once hit your donate page, you want to stay top of mind. So that's, if you still are doing that, they actually technically need to be separate accounts.
Another question up here.
Would we treat it like any other grant and report the in-kind donations?
So that's going to be like, really up to your CP, like your CPA or however you do your own bookkeeping. So we have organizations that do kind of do that, but we're also, or not like legal or financial advice. So it's really just however you want to manage that.
And then we have a question behind you.
Oh, sorry. I have two questions, sorry. So my first one is y'all mentioned kind of figuring out what words people are Googling. How do you figure that out?
So that's a good question. I'm glad you brought this up. So there's the keyword planner that Cameron had mentioned. So it's one of the tools within the AdWords platform. So Google creates a whole record of what you type into Google, and they know how many people are searching for a particular term or phrase in every location. You can specify what location that is, and it'll tell you how many people search it every month approximately. How much does it cost to rank for that keyword online? And so one of the things we find nonprofits, they spend all these time building out the campaigns, and then they realize people aren't searching for it online. So you want to make sure, do the keyword research, make sure people are typing what they're online before you spend all this time creating the ads, setting it up to find out no one's searching for it.
Okay, sorry, second question. The tools that y'all mentioned in the seminar, were those just really like what creates the pop-up boxes, the scroll boxes, things like that? Or was it something else?
Exactly. So the heat mapping, the pop-ups, those are all tools. With the ad grant, it allows you to send the traffic. And those tools help us take action based on the traffic we're sending. Because a lot of people say, well, the ad grant doesn't work. Well, that's because how are you getting the information? How are you providing the value to nonprofits? And these tools help us do that.
We'll create some sort of one-pager that highlights and links to those.
It's not because you said that the ad grants will send about 5,000 new leads to your website. Should nonprofits focus on list building from that point, or just creating that whole new traffic for campaigns, or how do you really maximize the AdWords traffic?
So that's a great question, and what's so cool about it is there's no one right answer. We've seen it bring in donations, we've seen email subscribers, speaking engagements, volunteer opportunities. Whatever you're looking for, you tailor it to. So wherever you send the traffic to, well, what's your ask? How are you providing value? And so it depends on what your nonprofit does.
Yeah, there's really a couple ways, right? With the grant, some nonprofits we work with, they really just want to make an impact through it. So maybe they just want more people to find out about their services. So for example, we work with an organization called Lions for Life. And really what they want us to focus on is people calling the crisis hotline or the suicide hotline and just really dialing, because they're using the grant really to save lives in a way. And then we'll have other organizations where we're focused on other elements, or we work with an organization that provides Alzheimer's support. And one of the things with the grant is, someone might search early signs of dementia or early signs of, or like Alzheimer's symptoms and all sorts of different things. And that's been really cool to see that this grant has helped people learn about these services sooner. But if it is, more focused on donations, that's why we wanted to definitely the list building tactics, because it's rare unless I'm searching donate to veterans or donate to education, if I'm going to hit a brand new website and just donate the first time.
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.